This podcast is presented to you by Angie Taylor, founding trustee of Land Bountiful Ministry, a private ministerial association. Land Bountiful Ministry is a private ministerial association with its own rules, terms, and conditions. Participation is conditional on membership of Land Bountiful Ministry. All information provided in this podcast is specifically created for private members of the ministry only. All content is offered for consideration, educational purposes, and private use only, and is not intended in any way to replace appropriate advice from appropriately qualified professionals. Each member is to discern for themselves the suitability of any and all information with regard to their own self and circumstances. Choosing to continue to listen to this podcast means you agree to be a member of Land Bountiful Ministry. Hello and welcome to your Fairy God Mentor. This is the show that inspires, encourages, educates, and supports expectant women seeking to experience unhindered, undisturbed physiologic birth, women ready to heal past emotional wounds surrounding birth, and women on a journey to create balance for herself and her family. I am Angie Taylor, the mother of 9, with 2 degrees in natural health. I am also a birth insider, knowing the ins and outs of the birth industry and all the good, the bad, and the ugly. I have worked with expectant women and their sweethearts since 2003 in a variety of roles, including childbirth educator, birth doula, home birth midwife, breastfeeding support, and life coaching. Sit back and enjoy hearing about all the things you never knew. Welcome to today's episode of Your Fairy God Mentor. I'm Angie Taylor, and today I am here with Amanda Ignot. So I'd like to start out this episode with having you share a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are right now.
Okay, so my name is Amanda Ignot. Like she said, I am a wife and a mom of 4, and I had 13 to 15 years of infertility. And then after seeking fertility help, I was able to conceive on my 4th IUI. But my pregnancy was not an experience that I ever wanted to relive. Not that the pregnancy was bad, but that the care was bad. And coming out of that, here you have a woman who's questioning the ability of her body because, first of all, I couldn't get pregnant on my own. Second of all, I couldn't have my baby the way I wanted to. And so as I'm holding my baby, and I think we all as mothers have an epiphany with our first, where we're like, all of a sudden we realize the responsibility that we are holding in our arms. That responsibility kind of like had my eyes go as big as saucers and my jaw kind of hit the floor like, who gave me this responsibility? Who thought I was capable of this, right? And so in that moment, right, I'm feeling broken and realizing how much responsibility I have for this tiny life that I'm now responsible for. And I realized in that moment that I had a lot to learn if I was going to make those decisions that were going to impact her life. And that gave me the realization that, hey, you need to step up and take ownership of your own health and your own care, because our system is broken. And that is why I had the poor care that I had. And it was kind of in that same moment that was revealed to me, where I'm standing there feeling broken and I hear this whisper in my head. And, it's our God Almighty who speaks to us in those moments when we're broken, when we're feeling that brokenness. And he said to me, he said, "You're not broken. You were never broken. That system is broken." And that revealed so much to me. And so I started on a journey of learning. And I basically at that point didn't think I was going to have more children. However, I didn't want any other women to go through what I went through, to experience that, to be forced into something they didn't want. Because that's basically how I felt. I was backed into a corner. And I ended up scheduling a C-section that I didn't want and didn't feel was necessary, because my daughter was breech. And to me, that is exactly what the doctor wanted, was for me to just schedule a C-section. She started talking about C-section at 4.5 months. And then at 9 months, she's breech. And, oh, well, you know what? The way she chose to explain an aversion was that it was painful and that it was dangerous. Like, she painted that picture for me to avoid it, for me to just give in. And I did. I gave in, but I gave in for the wrong reasons. I gave in because I wanted her out of my life. And I don't think anybody should ever have to make a medical decision based on whether they want their doctor in or out of their life. But that was what made my decision, was I didn't want that doctor in my life any longer. And I thought, well, I can schedule this and get it done, and then I don't have to deal with her. But that left me feeling broken. And that was a place I didn't like to be. So I didn't want anybody else to be there. And I started on my journey of learning, and that's how I got to where I'm at today. I am a pregnancy and childbirth mentor or coach, where I help women find the knowledge that they need to answer their concerns, so that they can have empowered births of their own, so that they can walk into their appointments, whether you choose to have an OB or a midwife. They can walk into their appointments and know that they can say yes or no to anything, that they get to make those decisions, and that they know ahead of time what tests or what procedures or what is going to be required of them. I help them lay that out so that they're not like me, walking through their first pregnancy. I knew nothing. I didn't seek answers. I didn't know what was required. I didn't know I could say no. And I abdicated my care to my care provider. She made all the decisions. I made none. And I gave over my power in that. And I will never do that again. So going forward, I ended up having 3 more children, all organically conceived. And I birthed them at home at 40, 41, and 43. So that's my story. That's who I am. And that's my passion, is to speak into women, because I believe that all women can have such amazing birth experiences that they want to shout it from the mountaintops, that they want to share their experience, but not from a, oh my gosh, it was so horrible, I never want to do that again standpoint, but from a, oh my gosh, it was amazing, I want to do it again. Right. That's what I want to hear women talking about.
I love that. And I love that you point out this whole concept of that your doctor took authority from you. She became in charge of you. I've been having this conversation a lot with people, with women and their sweethearts over the past few weeks, about the fact that, we pay someone money, but that doesn't mean we're giving them our authority. That does not mean that we are placing them in a role to dictate to us what will and will not happen, especially in the arena of birth. So, and that's very eye-opening and shocking for a lot of couples when they hear that said, because they immediately go, wow, you're right. And that is exactly what we did. But it's a process that we go through throughout our lives. It's part of why there's well child checks, right? So we grow up going to see this doctor, and we learn over that process that they have authority over our bodies, and that is a lie. They do not have authority over our bodies. So it's really important, really, really, really important for us to maintain our own authority as we're going through life in general, not just pregnancy and birth, but everything that we do where we are seeking counsel and guidance from another person.
Yes, exactly. Because if you were going to a hair salon, you're paying them for a service. You're not going to let them do whatever they want with your hair and walk out and be like, oh, well, this isn't what I wanted, but oh, well. So why
At
do
least I
we do
didn't
that
die.
when it, right? Well, why do we do that when it comes to our medical care? Like, I don't care if they went to medical school and are a specialist in this, that, or the other thing. The problem is, and especially with our system in this, we are a whole person.
Mhm.
Your cardiologist needs to understand how your heart works with the rest of your body and how your endocrine system is affecting your whatever's, right? Like all of it
Right.
works together. And if it's not working, if one portion of it is not working, they need to seek out like where is the interruption happening? But they're going to focus on that one piece because that's
Mhm.
their specialty. My specialty is the heart. I'm going to focus on what's going on with the heart and I'm going to make that work right. Okay. But what happened to the cause? The cause didn't go away. We just addressed the symptom. And then what? Right.
Right.
And it's so funny because we abdicate our care in so many places. But like you mentioned, the well checks, we have been groomed. We
Mhm.
have been programmed to follow the rules when it comes to our care. However, how many of us as adults go to the doctor when we're feeling well? I'm not raising my hand for that one.
Me either.
Right? If we're feeling well, we don't go to the doctor. So why are we taking our tiny little babies to the doctors at these very like intimate times in their life? Like they only
Mhm.
need their family during those times.
Right.
And unless they're sick, they shouldn't be going to the doctor. And yet we're told take these
Yeah.
kids to the like every what is it, every 4 weeks? It's every however many weeks or every 3 months. Like
Yeah. And then you
it's
get to a point where
crazy
it's
how
like
many
every 6 months, and then it's every year until they reach a certain age, and then you can wait a few
right,
years and things like that.
right.
So yeah.
And that's crazy, right? Like, wait a second. I don't go for those checkups. Why do I need to do that for my child? And so that's a thing. We've been programmed to believe that all of that is necessary. And I want to chuck all those programs out in the
Mhm.
garbage where they belong. Because, like I said, if you are well, we don't need to see a doctor to document that.
Right. Right. Exactly it.
We can
Yeah.
document that with pictures and memories. We don't need to go to the doctor's office
Mhm.
to document that our child weighed this much and had grown this much and whatever.
Right. That's what the door
We don't
frame is
need all
for,
that.
right? To
Right,
check the height and
exactly. Yes, exactly. I love that.
so there's a lot of first time moms that are afraid, and they choose to birth in the hospital because they believe that that's the safe place for them. This is my first time, I don't know anything, so I'm just going to let the experts do their thing. So how do you help your clients overcome the fear of childbirth when they're pregnant for the first time or planning a natural birth for the first time? Because we have to remember, if someone's only experienced inductions, they really haven't experienced natural birth. They've experienced a counterfeit. I think that's the best word I can use.
Right.
It is a counterfeit,
Right.
which gives them a wrong impression of what birth is. So until a woman experiences birth, in its glory, and yes, I do believe that is like the best word. A woman doesn't really understand what birth is, and until she takes that plunge, that leap of faith to just let her body do what it's designed to do. So how do we help her overcome that fear of childbirth?
So what I would do with first time moms, or what I do with first time moms, is I help I unveil kind of the process. So if you're not a first time mom and you have experienced birth before, but it hasn't been a physiological birth, it hasn't been a natural birth that's not interrupted in some way, then we can unpack that. We can like peel back the layers of it and like say, okay, well, let's see what happened in that experience, and let's compare that, because I've had 3 natural births. So I can actually say, well, okay, we go through this process, but we didn't experience that because we didn't have those drugs involved in that, or however it is. But I also encourage women and first time moms to seek knowledge, because yeah, I understand the unknown. The unknown is very intimidating. And when the majority of the stories you hear are the horror stories that
Right.
women are sharing, you don't hear the beautiful stories like mine unless you're looking for them. Most of the time, you'll get the people who had bad experiences who will just, without your requesting it, just blurt out what their experience was. And that's what you're going to be bombarded with. So
Right.
that only raises your fear. So there's a couple of things. You need to protect your space. And that means you don't have to share your plans with anybody. You are not obligated to tell anybody where you're going to birth, who your doctor is, and what all your, you don't have to say anything.
Right.
Change the subject anytime somebody brings it up, because it's not their business. They don't get a say in it. So there's that. I talk to people about setting boundaries around what is theirs, because this, mama, is your experience. Nobody else is going to be pushing for you.
Right.
You are going to be doing that work for yourself. So it's your experience. Make it what you want it, and don't give other people a voice in that, because they don't get a voice in that. And so part of acknowledging your concerns is seeking the knowledge that will tear that fear down, because knowledge trumps fear on every level. If you're scared of something, learn about it. Once you learn about it, now you have answers to your concerns. You're no longer in a place of fear. You're in a place of knowledge, which builds confidence. The other thing I highly suggest is to go into the Word. Oof, the Word, I didn't know that was coming. The Word of God, He created all things. And if we look around us in nature, birth is happening all the time. The squirrels are never going to go away. I'm sorry to tell you this, but they're never going away. Right? And they're not questioning their ability to continue to grow. They're not questioning their existence in society or in wilderness. They're not questioning it. And yet here we are, walking, talking, smart, intelligent beings. And we question our ability, our God-given ability to do one thing that God says: go forth and multiply. Well, I don't know about you, but the only way I know how to multiply is to make littles, right?
Right.
We multiply by making littles.
Right.
So how can we do that if we weren't made to do that? Right? God created us in His image perfect. And if we question the natural ability of our bodies to get pregnant and stay pregnant and then have a baby, we're questioning our creation.
Right.
So go to the Word. build your confidence in knowing who you are and who you were created to be. Because as women, we were all created to be mothers. And that will be a different thing for many women. There are women who are not mothers in the sense that they had children, but they are mothers, they are teachers, they are they have mothered in one way or another, even if it's just being an aunt to their nieces and nephews. They are mothering somebody, they are mentoring somebody, and that was who God created that person to be. But if you have a yearning on your heart to have children, to be a mother, that yearning came from him. He planted it within you. He has a purpose for those children that he is going to bring to you, and he has a purpose for your experience in that. Now, I know my purpose was to bring me right here in front of you, to speak into you, to have the ability to say, okay, I can take a step back and say, instead of being fearful, I'm going to seek knowledge. I'm going to seek truth. And I'm going to set boundaries to protect my mindset and my belief through my experience. So that is kind of what I would do for first-time moms and moms who are wanting a natural birth after having a C-section like myself, or they've had all inductions because one reason or another that they were told that they couldn't go to term or to babies wanting to arrive.
Right. Or that their cervix won't open. It won't dilate. It forgot how.
Yeah.
And as women, and I love that you talk about going to the Word and going to God and remembering who he created us to be. He did not make it intentionally impossible for a woman to not conceive. There are things happening in our world that create that environment within us. So that's another area of knowledge that helps us to heal. He designed us to be able to conceive, carry, give birth to, and nourish another human being. That is our superpower. And this fear of childbirth is not of God. Fear never comes from our Father in heaven, ever. He knows who we are. And as a person who stands as a witness during births, being a birth-keeping midwife, I'm still kind of finding my way around of how I want to really refer to myself, because not all midwives are the same. The name is getting tainted. So really just the wisdom keeping of birth and, a sovereign midwife, these are all the things I'm playing with. But as a person who stands in that sacred space and witnesses as a woman brings her tiny human into the world, I can testify to the fact that God is present and has been present in every birth that I have been present to witness. And so women need to understand that. We have to know that as we are giving birth, whether we believe in God or not, he is there. Angels are with us. We are being constantly administered to on the spiritual realm as well as the physical realm. Whether we're choosing to do a family birth with just our sweetheart and other children present, perhaps we have a mom that is supportive and we can bring her into that space with us. Or we've chosen a midwife, or even in the hospital. I can testify, even as a birth doula, when I was serving couples in the hospital, I was very aware of the spiritual realm that was in the room, helping me to support those women. So we've got to get rid of the fear. We have to know that this is how our body works, period. I like to tell clients that I know how your body is supposed to work, and we're just going to go with the fact that this is how your body works until it proves us wrong. And it has not yet proven us wrong. Yeah, it hasn't proven us wrong. Even with a breastfeeding woman who has insufficient glandular tissue, she is still able to produce some amount of milk. She just may not be able to produce enough to exclusively breastfeed her child. So her body is functioning to a degree, you know, so we just have to really understand how our body is designed for this work. It's what we were created to do.
Right. I actually just had a thought as you were talking, and it's kind of funny because I've never even like taken it to this point, but so we question ourselves when it comes to conception and pregnancy and childbirth, but did we question whether we were going to get our period or not? Like, no, we were just fearful of the time it was going to come because, you know, it's not something we can plan out that first time, right? But as girls, hopefully our mothers had conversations with us about it, and we knew it was coming at some point, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, right, but we never question like, no, that's just a part of life. It's going to happen. Well, conception and childbirth is kind of the same thing. Like, it's just a part of the process. It's naturally occurring in life. If you have animals around you, if cats or dogs, like they're not waiting around for somebody to come check on them.
Right.
In fact, they're probably hiding from you.
Yes.
When the time comes, they're probably hiding from you. They've probably made a secure place where they feel safe, and they will have their babies there. It's just natural. And so you have to think about it, like, have that natural sense of mind that, well, yeah, I got my period without even thinking about it. You can't tell yourself when to conceive. You can do all the things you can to make it happen.
Right.
But you're still like, you have little control over when it actually happens. And the same thing is true with childbirth. You have no control over when that happens. It's going to happen. I promise you it's going to happen, but you have no control over it because it's a naturally occurring thing. And it's something when the baby is ready. And unfortunately, that 39 to 40 weeks, the 41 weeks, 42 weeks is a very constrictive timing.
Yes.
Very constrictive. And I would, love to be the person who could say, let yourself go as long as you want. But until you have an understanding of what pregnancy and childbirth, like the physiological aspect of it, until you know and understand that, you're probably going to be on that skeptical side of, well, I can't do that. They say all these things about your placenta, which are completely false. Completely false, but they will sell you all the tactics they can to get you into their thing. And then, like you were saying with the midwives, I love the traditional birth attendant namesake because of that. Like, you're right, midwives are tainted, and it's getting worse with the pressure of licensure that is being pushed because they're held to the same obstetric levels as your OB. So even though you're at home, they still have so many regulations that they have to meet, that a lot of them are protecting their licensure over protecting their clients. And it can be very harmful to the woman in their care. So women like yourself and myself, I would sit at a birth. If you want a free birth, I'll sit there. I can hold space because I believe in it. I believe in you, the creation of you, the creation of this life. I can sit in that space and hold that space and hold that belief and that calm serenity that birth can bring when you understand it. And just be there, right? I can do that. But unless you have the mindset to be in that place, I can't take on any responsibility for you.
Right.
And I think that's the bigger picture of it. Like, I abdicated my care to my OB, But when it came to my next pregnancy, I took ownership. And I can tell you that my OB did not like me because I did know what I wanted. I knew what I didn't want. And he didn't like it that I wasn't just going to line up with the rest of his patients. And I didn't care if he didn't like it.
Right.
I went
and that
to
is
every
key.
appointment knowing that. Like, I went to every appointment knowing he did not like it, that I knew what I knew and that I would stand my ground. And, I had that confidence that it didn't matter because I own my care.
Right.
And so when it came to my birth, I owned every aspect of that. I never asked my midwife even for anything. Now that I think about it, I'm like, I didn't ask for anything. And then with my next two, I paid a midwife to be there only for the birth. I had wild pregnancies where I did whatever I wanted to do. If I felt like I needed to go have a test done or get an ultrasound or whatever, I took care of that. But my midwife was only paid for, or I only hired her for the actual birth, and she missed those. So there you go.
Yeah.
It's the story of my life. Pay for it and it doesn't happen.
Right. Well, and it is the system right now gives couples the false sense of no need to take responsibility because we're going to take responsibility for you. And the people who find out that that's not true are the people who end up with a train wreck of an experience. And then as they are trying to process what just happened, everything, the responsibility is putting in their lap. Well, we asked and you said yes, and we asked and you said yes, and we asked and you said yes. So this is how we got here. If you didn't want it done, you should have said something and taken responsibility. And that blindsides a lot of couples. So it's important for couples to know you are responsible for the outcome, regardless of whether you're going to the hospital with an OB, with a certified nurse midwife, or if you're at home with a midwife in a birth center with a midwife, if you're birthing alone. And that's what I love about couples choosing family birth, also known as unassisted, which is a wrong terminology because a woman doesn't need assistance in the first place. But these women, by and large, and their sweethearts are taking responsibility right down to going to breech classes, taking resuscitation classes, learning everything that midwives learn. Some of them learning more than some midwives learn because they're taking full responsibility, and they've come to acknowledge the fact that midwifery textbooks don't belong just to midwives. Anybody can purchase them. Everybody can read them. You can sit down and have a conversation with other women who have gone down the same road that you are headed down, and have a conversation about your fears, your concerns, your worries, and they'll lay it all out for you and give you all of the tips and tricks on, oh, well, if that happens, do this, and if you think that's going to happen, do this, and it's all there. The wisdom from the granny midwives has not disappeared. It's just challenging to find, and it is being completely unearthed as we speak. Because as you said earlier, the system of care that I refer to as the man-made baby delivery system is crumbling. And it is going to happen very quickly, I believe, in the next decade at least. We will have a completely different, there will still be a system of care, but it will unfold and be completely different. The parents are going to dictate what is in that system of care. And I really believe that we will flip-flop what the births are right now. So it'll flip-flop back to most humans being born at home instead of in a clinical setting. So that's just what I'm envisioning. So in this, I'm trying to word how I want to say this. in the educational process, one of the things that you and I have talked about that a lot of couples don't consider and think about, think about why they might need this information. But it's the, why is it wise for us as women and men to know and understand how we came into the world and how our parents came into the world? So you and I know what the answer is there. So I'm going to let you start with, why is that important? How does that impact the couple?
So it's an interesting thing that, again, back to the fact that we are created to do this thing, but we also, our bodies hold memories. If you've ever heard anything about your feelings and how they get trapped in your body, like anger is held in your liver, right? So if you have liver problems, check where you've got anger and figure out how to release it, right? Like there's things, right? So we know that our body holds memory in different places. Well, believe it or not, your body remembers your birth. So if your body remembers your birth, when your labor begins, it's going to remember what that felt like on its own body. It's going to remember that process. And great thing to know about is if your mother giving birth to you experienced trauma, you carry that trauma. So if when labor starts, you all of a sudden are like, say you were a mom who was like, I want a home birth, I want to go all natural. Say you're that mother. And then in the moment, it's like you freeze up and you can't, like your body's just not progressing. That can literally be from your own birth because your body's panicking because the trauma is being triggered and you don't even remember it, but your body does. So it's really important to know what your experience was. What was your birth experience? Not the birth you're giving, your birth. When you were birthed into this world, what was that birth experience like? The other great reason to know why or know about your birth and even your mother's birth, your husband's birth, and his mother's birth is that because of that knowledge that we carry as babies into adulthood and through our own process, we can actually glean an idea of how our labors will go. And an example of that is, funny enough, my mother doesn't know anything about labor. She wouldn't tell you that she knows anything. But when she was pregnant with me, I made her wet herself when she got up to clean off the dinner table. And she was like, oh, it's time to go. They went to the hospital and they told her my due date was May 18th. My due date, my guest date was May 18th and it was May 8th. And they were like, oh, she's not ready to come. You're not having a baby tonight. Just go home and rest. And my mom is like, no, I'm having a baby. And they're like, no, you're not. And this was in 1976. So women hear this well. They've been doing this controlling crud for years.
Yeah.
I'm 46 years of telling women that they don't know what the heck they're talking about when it's their body. My mom scooted into another patient's room to use the bathroom. And they pulled her off the toilet and we're like, no, you can't do that in here. And I was born within an hour of her getting to the hospital and they're trying to tell her to go home. She would have had me in the car on the way home.
Right.
Had they have gotten her to the car. And so when I was pregnant the first time and I had a miscarriage in my 20s, so that time when I conceived, the only advice my mother gave me was, if you think it's time for baby to come, get your butt to the hospital. Because I and my mother had fast labors. There was wisdom in her sharing that with me.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, I knew nothing, and I'll admit that now. I knew absolutely nothing about pregnancy and childbirth, and I would have checked off all the boxes back then in my 20s, same way I did at 37. However, when it came to me knowing that information, I think that really helped me to just know that when the time was right, it was just going to happen, and it was going to happen quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And for a first time mom having a natural birth, after my C-section, my first home birth, I had contractions like all day and through the night. And then the next morning at 6:00 in the morning, my water broke. And at 10 minutes after 10, I was holding a baby. I would say many women who are first time moms are told 12 hours is like a short birth for a first time experience in a natural birth. So, and yes, I could basically say that all those contractions leading up to that point were labor. They were labor. But I can tell you that from water breaking to baby in my arms, that was definitely labor. Right? The rest was just the contractions leading up to. But so I had a 4-hour birth experience. And then with my second home birth, it was under an hour from water breaking to baby in my arms. Less than an hour. And then my third home birth was less than half an hour. So I got to the point with my fourth, I was literally to the point where I'm like kind of scared to even go to Walmart by myself, because what am I going to do if something happens like in Walmart, and then I'm rushing to the car just so I can have my baby in the car, then to drive myself home. Right. Like I was like, this is a scenario like that's running through my head on the constant. Every time I left my house, I was like, am I going to accidentally have my baby in my vehicle or in the middle of Walmart, having crazy people be like, oh my gosh, you can't do this here. Like I had some crazy visions in my head about this happening. But it didn't, thank God. But when it did happen, right, like 20 minutes, my midwife was like, yeah, I understand your mindset of not wanting to go very far from home.
Right.
I was like, right, because it could happen at any time, literally. And so knowing that, like I said, knowing that my mom, her only advice to me was, I had fast labors and my mother had fast labors. So I know that my grandmother, who had 9 children, had fast labors as well. Well, that tells me that, first of all, my body is capable. And second of all, it's going to do it fast when the time is right. And it has proven to be true. It has proven to be true. And so what I know is that I've passed that down to my children. Now I have some healing work to do with my oldest, because she was born through C-section, so she didn't get that knowledge. However, I've worked on that because she has attended all 3 of my births and will someday be attending births with me of her own volition, because she loves that thing, that part of life. We play the game all the time. She is so, I can't go anywhere without her pointing out every pregnant woman in the place and every new baby, even up to a year-old. I cannot go anywhere without her doing that. And she says she wants to be a midwife. She's already got that mindset of believing. However, I do know that I still need to work with her. And I'm already doing that. I'm already planting those seeds, but there's still some healing that she needs to go through to be able to step into the natural birth when it's her turn. But that's why knowing that stuff is so important. And if your husband's
Yeah.
a bigger person, you might want to ask his mom how her birth went.
Mm-hmm.
And I would encourage you to not be scared by her experience, just to hear it and release it, right? Like, because if it was a traumatic experience, you don't want to carry that, but you want to hear it and release it.
Mm-hmm.
Because at least you have that knowledge. But your birth experience and your mother's and your grandmother's like laboring experiences are going to be very telling to what your body is going to do, because that is what it remembers.
Absolutely. Right. Well, and if your mom experienced fear during her birth, could be where your fear of childbirth comes from. Because babies feel everything that the mom feels. So whatever your primary emotion is during the pregnancy and birth experience will be the child's primary emotion for life until you and the child learn healing and how to heal that and find the closure. It's fascinating, especially with epigenetics now here and available for us to learn exactly how connected we are to each other and everything in the world. So Amanda, what do you have to offer? What is something that you're offering right now to benefit pregnant mamas and their lovers, and in this process of creating and bringing tiny humans into the world?
So I have a workshop that I am just so happy to have put together for people, because it is a healing process of where, so we talked about healing through different aspects, right?
Mm-hmm.
And healing through your traumatic birth experience is something that is so necessary if you are wanting to have a different experience going forward, even if that experience includes having your baby at the hospital and you still want an epidural, but you don't want all the other stuff, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's completely up to you. But again, if that's what you want, you're still going to have to work for it. You still
Mm-hmm.
have to gain the backbone that I am responsible for my care. I
Mm-hmm.
choose for me, and no, you don't get to railroad me into what you want. You have to
Mm-hmm.
have that posture, that backbone, and to stand behind that. But part of that is healing from your previous birth experiences, because they've stripped you of your power in that space. So when you go
Mm-hmm.
back to that space, you kind of end up going back to that place of, I'm powerless here.
Right.
Unless you heal and leave that stuff in the past. So what I have is I created a workshop. It's called the Birth Story Healing and Redemptive Birth Vision Workshop. And what I do with that in that workshop is I walk you through a process of unraveling your previous birth experiences, your traumas. I reveal the truths that are behind what happened in your experience, because in most cases you can pinpoint and point them out. Like, it's so sad to say this, but it's most of the instances that you have experienced in your traumatic birth experience are so common now
Mm-hmm.
that us that are educated in childbirth and pregnancy, we can literally like take your record and look at it and be like, well, here is where it happened.
Mm-hmm.
This
Right.
right here started this, and this. And that is where all that trauma came from. So what we do is we unpack that. And then I give you tools and a process of releasing that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we talk about creating your redemptive birth vision. And I help you to let go of the vision of what was and cast the vision of what you want your future birth experiences to be. And so I love this workshop because it literally, I've got goosebumps because I can see so many women being healed from their and families. It's not just the woman. I mean, the woman is the one who suffered the trauma, but I guarantee you that if you had trauma, your husband experienced trauma as well.
Yes.
Because a man's first instinct is to protect his wife and his family. And in those moments, they literally feel powerless.
Right.
And that trauma can run very deep with them. And if you know men, they don't like to talk about these things.
Right.
But your healing can bring about his healing, because you can help then you can create a safe space for him to talk about what his experience was. And then you can help him by assuring him that you are okay. Right? Because if you heal, then you can release him of any guilt he holds in that space. So I love that I can bring that healing to families and give them like a vision to shoot for. And what happens when you have that vision is you're more likely to seek out the knowledge to make that vision come true.
Right.
So that is what I have available.
So how do people find that? How do they get involved with that workshop?
You can find that workshop on my website. It is amandaignot.com. And it's just a little button at the top line of my website. You can find that, and it just says workshop. And when you click on it, it'll take you to a page that kind of talks about all the things that go on in there. And if you use intro 50, you get $50 off the cost of that.
Nice.
So yeah, and you can also find me if you're just looking for a community of women where you can ask questions and kind of gain some knowledge with quick tips and stuff. You can find me on Facebook at Open-Minded and Empowered Birthing Mamas, where I've created that space.
Nice. Thank you so much, Amanda, for being here. I have really enjoyed our conversation, and this is going to be, as all of my episodes are, life-changing for the women who listen. So I really appreciate you taking the time to be here today.
I have been honored and blessed to be here with you, Angie. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. To learn more about Land Bountiful Ministry, visit our website, landbountifulministry.org. To learn more about this week's guest, simply visit the description for this episode. And if you'd like to be a guest on this show, send an email to Angie at landbountifulministry.org.